Still scouting. But, I just want to go to the unit counting station for a moment. Notice that Artosis only got 6 Zerglings. Very few Zerglings. It might seem like a bad investment to get Zergling speed this quickly and then not really get any Zerglings out of it. However, I will say that there are so many early attacks that the Terran can do that if you get speed that early, and let's say your opponent masses Reapers or something like that. If he masses Reapers, you already have Zergling speed out. Therefore, you can easily kill the Reapers off, and your Terran opponent is really shut down super hard. So, great move to get Zergling speed this early against Terran on a map this small. If it were, say, Lost Temple, or as the Asia server map calls it, for some reason it's called Lost for One. If you're playing on Lost for One, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend this because there's really no reason to sacrifice this much of an economy. But either way, Artosis, it looked like his money was a little bit high, but he is now spending it adding on these spine crawlers. He is now getting his lair. He threw guys back into gas. So this is what I would call a pretty good opening. Pretty stable. It deals with a lot of variety of attacks. Looks like Side is just now finishing his orbital command and just now getting some more barracks. This is some pretty cool play by Side. We'll talk about how it's cool in just a second. But this is what I would call, right about now, I would call this the end of the opening. So let us stop right here. So, as I rearrange my glasses in a very intellectual fashion, I've been saying this word a lot, and I'm going to keep repeating it in the next few casts because I think it's so important. You need to divide your play into big, broad chunks, like an early game chunk, a middle game chunk, a late game chunk. And you heard me talk about these common trends right at the start of the cast. You heard me say Zerg players mainly go Hydra, Roach, and then into Broodlord, or they'll go Ling, Baneling into Ultralisk. These are two different mid-game chunks. And I'm going to say that Artosis is going to do something really revolutionary and really amazing and really different. And I'm mainly talking about the mid-game chunk that Artosis is going to do. Suppose for a moment that you are one of these players that likes going Mutalisk into Ling, Baneling, and then into Ultralisk. Let's say that is the style that you like. You can still do this opening that Artosis did and be great. The fact that Artosis got Zergling speed up so early, defends against all sorts of good stuff, and gets him a nice, safe expansion at a good time, and he's well defended and can deal with a variety of threats and put pressure on his opponent. It's a good opening chunk. Let's just chunk that into one group. That is good. So I wanted to stop right now just so you can look at this game state and think to yourself, well, you know what? I actually like doing this weird, unusual style that I've never seen anyone else do. And I've been looking for a good opening. Consider Artosis' opening, that once again you can download with Artosis' Asia Replay Pack number 2. It's on mymym.com, as Artosis is in MYM, as of the recording of this video, or on teamliquid.net. Just peruse the internets, and you can find this build and copy this opening. So, if you're not the sort of player who likes stealing entire build orders start to finish from a player, you can always steal sections of them. So I would say up to this point, a lot of brilliance coming out of Artosis. Uh-oh, here comes the Hellion Harass. Now watch this production tab by Artosis. I have the production up. Only drones have been made by Artosis. Here are the 2 drones that are actually in production. These 2 spine crawlers are pretty brilliantly placed. I mean, he has his ramp blocked, and he has any sort of runaround blocked. Side getting some Hellions up, and Artosis is now getting his lair up. And the Artosis that I used to know, the Artosis that would get the mainly Hydralisk mid-game, would be throwing down a den here. This is actually the style of play that Artosis did when I played against him in the Team Liquid Invite series. It was kind of a long name, but it was the Team Liquid Invite for American server players. And Artosis pretty much would jump right into Hydralisk, but interestingly, looks like that he is going for Roaches. Oh, okay, so now I'm starting to see a little bit of different stuff go on. Artosis hasn't really done anything with his lair quite yet. He still is just making drones, or at least he should be. We're just going to wait for our production tab for just a second. Yep, note up at the production tab, many drones. Again, someone might say, oh, Artosis, you made, Zergling speed so fast, that was the focus of what you were doing, but now I see nothing. I see only 6 Zerglings. It seemed a little bit useless, but that is the wrong way to think. I need to emphasize that quite a bit. So I'm going to come back to the resource counting station. So Artosis is getting a Roach Warren, which is, I would say, half normal. Sometimes players will get that delayed Roach Warren, so that way they can get up the Roach speed oh so fast because their layer's done. But then Artosis is doing something even funkier. He's getting a Baneling nest as well, and double Evo chambers. Now this is a very trademark Artosis move, these relatively fast double Evo chambers. But the Baneling nest is something pretty new altogether. The idea of going Roaches and Banelings. We're going to see how it turns out. Now, because this game is focused on Artosis and all his brilliance and all his glory, we've been spending almost all the time focusing on our good friend Artosis. But let's bounce over onto Side's half of the map and just briefly highlight some of the cool things that are going on. So he got these Hellions pretty quickly. These are to keep Zerg on the feet while the Terran takes an expansion. And look at this brilliant wall off by Side. He makes bunkers and supply depots. This is a tight wall off, so nothing can squeeze in this side. Units can still pour down. This is a relatively Baneling proof wall in. And if Side chooses to move out, he can just burrow these supply depots, or he can salvage these bunkers, or do both. And in the meantime, he's getting, looks like a lot of Marauders, is getting some Marines. He is getting the Combat Shield and Stim upgrade. So these three are normal. These three is just going, oh yes, I want a very big Marine Marauder mid-game. Fantastic. But this factory with tanks is increasingly becoming popular. I'll still call it a modern style of play, as opposed to a standard style of play. People love getting their tanks. They're going to turn out to be surprisingly good against Banelings. But now Artosis is beginning to mass up a lot of Zerglings once again. He hasn't quite gotten any Roaches coming to the unit counting station. Looks like his first set of Roaches just now popping out, so that is fantastic. Just very good little transitioning coming on by Artosis, and has a pretty decent drone count. I'm going to bounce back over to the resource tab. And Side has had very strong macro this game, has pulled ahead of Artosis in food. But the number of tactics that Artosis is going to use this game is pretty stunning. So this is the part that I alluded to a little bit in the early stages of the game. Artosis has a very easy third base. Zerg in general on this map has a very easy third base. You can just put your spine crawlers here. You have these two entrances, very easy to manage. Here comes this big push by Side. It's a little bit less scary than you might imagine, just because Artosis has this area of high ground. This is one of the most key moments of this entire game. Looks so uneventful, you know, it's just two spine crawlers chilling at a ramp. But if you have felt Zerg vs. Terran from Zerg's point of view, with all the early shenanigans Terran can pull off, you feel like shit when Terran just walks right up your ramp and is kiting Marauders and Hellions really early on. You just want to rip your head off. But I remember I was watching a series of games between Chthon Luck and Slush, two incredibly talented players from Root. And Chthon Luck is a very aggressive Terran. He loves early Marauder Hellion openings. He just loves those early Marauder Hellion openings because Hellions roast the Zerglings, Marauders roast everything else. But Slush got creep tumors very, very, very quickly to this fat ramp. Right here. Sprinted to get creep there. And once the spine crawlers were here, that attack was completely shut down. No ability to micro up and down here, because without consistent vision, it's too hard to shoot up and down. That high ground advantage is huge for managing micro battles. So even this is a little bit less scary than you might imagine, because Terran has to spend all this time scanning. But in the meantime, Artosis, look at all these Banelings he's built up. Zerglings, some Roaches, not that many, but mainly Zerglings and Banelings. God, these Roaches are just such a cool touch. And he's gotten the +1 range and carapace upgrade for the Roaches. He's even gotten the speed upgrade for Banelings, which of course does require a layer. So, looks like this very fast layer tech was only to get this speed upgrade for the Overlords, and then to get speed for the Roaches and the Banelings. But what use is speed without double speed from creep? So that's why all these creep tumors are gooping up the center of the map. Very responsible by Artosis to begin that early on. Already spotting these islands, because you never know. Artosis always jokes about how unbelievably cheesy players are on the Asia server, and honestly, yeah, they are the sort of people who would early expand to the island and feel all clever about it. And of course win, and then you want to, you know, similarly to the last story, you would want to, quote, rip your head off. Always an annoying way to lose. So, Let's actually back up a little bit because I was poking around in Artosis' base and we missed the action. So here are a bunch of Zerglings in the middle of the map. Hellion's going to do a little bit of poking, but watch how fast these Zerglings are able to get up to it. But of course, look at the tank fire. This is why tanks are becoming increasingly popular, because players are starting to really realize how incredible they are as backup, especially against Banelings. If you target fire in the middle of that, it's just one big giant Nickelodeon-style gack splat on the middle of your Laffy Taffy right here. It's sometimes fun to call creep Laffy Taffy because it makes you feel like you're playing a game for actual fun, as opposed to a game where you're trying to murder someone on the other side of a globe through the internet. So here's the command center popping down right here. I would say this is, typical by Terran. Once you get a big macro going, just kill this off and take your other base. Terran's being a little bit more passive.